and thanks everybody for being here. This session I actually gave at the Business Analytics Conference in Chicago a couple months back. So this is my second time doing it, and really passionate about sharing, whatever lessons learned or new technology that I've learned about that could potentially help people. This is a dimensional modeling session. So we're going to be covering subscription-based businesses and how to model those and try to build a data warehouse from some typical data patterns that you see in this industry. My name is Angel Abundez, and I'm a business intelligence team lead with DesignMind. And DesignMind is a Microsoft Gold partner in the San Francisco Bay Area, specializing in .NET, SharePoint, SQL Server, and business intelligence. And my primary role there is just to help our team's delivery, exceeding customer expectations with regards to BI architecture, BI delivery, warehousing, visualization, self-service BI, and mobile BI, and some other things.
Angel, I just had, sorry to interrupt, just had a couple people that asked, can you either scoot a little closer to your mic? They just can't hear you very well.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's okay. Great. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is the subscription economy exactly? So 40% of you are actively using subscriptions. Well, I think you'll be surprised to know that at some point in your life you might have subscribed into the subscription economy, and I'm going to go through some examples. The first example being magazines. So this is an old magazine cover from a magazine that I was actually the subscriber to. This is the 1986 September issue of Highlights for Children. My first grade teacher suggested that I keep up with my reading skills by subscribing to a magazine, and she suggested this one. So we submitted a card, and I think we subscribed for a year and submitted a check, and in came the magazines 1 month at a time. And of course they had different year levels where I could go either 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, so I could pick, based on what I was comfortable with, or what my mom was comfortable with for paying. And there you go. So that's one example. Second example, in 5th grade, I got a little bit older, and I had a paper route, and I used to deliver papers for the West County Times out here in the East Bay. I grew up out here in the Bay Area, and I had my bike, and I delivered the papers. But what little did I know, I was to be part of the subscription economy, going door to door to collect money from people for their monthly or annual subscription to the newspaper. So that's another example. And this example is actually still prevalent today. Out here close to where I live in a small town of Winters is a publication called the Winters Express. And the gentleman here photographed it, kind of came out in the Wall Street Journal because, paper-based newspapers and magazines are starting to become a little hard to sell with all of the digital content that you can get on mobile devices nowadays. But this company is still growing, still delivering, and still satisfying the local community. And so some other subscription types that we're very familiar with are things like cell phones, things like car leases, where we lease a brand new vehicle for a set amount of time for a set amount of miles. And depending on our lifestyle, that may be exactly what we want. And cable TV. Obviously, you pay a monthly subscription. It's not considered a subscription, but it is a subscription in its own right, with different package levels that you can get depending on the channels you want. So this is a subscription economy, and a lot of what I've shown here is the stuff that's been around for a long time. And this model, the way it works or the way it used to work, with advertising, word of mouth, television ads, newspaper ads, and things of that sort, trying to get customers to sign up for the subscription. And the types of subscriptions, it's very linear. So the amount of people that you can get with marketing dollars and stuff like that is still, you know, the same way they do it today, but with but today the technology that we have has dramatically changed the way we communicate. And so just trying to depict here that to go from a lead to actually a business generating revenue from that lead on a subscription used to be challenging. But in today's economy, with our technology, we can leverage things like the cloud. We can leverage things like the mobile devices that a lot of people have and are very prevalent. And on the back side of things, within these subscription companies, things are changing very rapidly now. It just takes somebody to post a blog, or for people to start observing. I'll call it observing, not complaining. Observing things, services and products that they wish they could have, or that they wish a company would offer or change about their product or service. So, you know, the way leads get into the ecosystem is very easy, with mobile devices being, you know, you could be on a train and subscribe to one of these services I'll describe here in a second. But once a company gets you in their ecosystem and you become satisfied with that service, there's a lot of different ways for that company to cross-sell their products and get you exposed to different pricing tiers, you know, depending on if you're a consumer or an enterprise customer. And it's very efficient. A lot of businesses are seeing this, and they're adapting this into their own models, Microsoft being one of them. So we talked about Xbox. That's one that my family really enjoys, and my kids watch Netflix, and so do, and you know, us parents, we watch that too. Amazon Prime is another one we just subscribed to because Nick Jr. Just I guess signed up with Amazon Prime, and Netflix let that subscription or that content provider elapse. So, you know, things happen, businesses change, but still the price point is very, very convenient for us. And then, you know, mobile devices such as tablets, very, very easy to get digital content. And these are just some of the ones that I use a lot. And you know, some of the top two, Fast Company and Audible, are examples of content type subscriptions. Evernote, Dropbox are productivity apps that I use. So a lot of different ways that companies have figured out how to provide their product or service at a nice price point for the usage that in my particular case that I need. Software as a service. Now this is a very interesting one. Because of the cloud and because of cloud providers and colos. So things like Windows Azure, or Amazon Web Services, if you have a business that needs to start up, and you know, you don't want to drop a lot of money into hardware and software and networking and firewall and all that usual stuff that we used to have to buy, and now you can just circumvent that by spinning up virtual machines, spinning up different cloud services, like HD Insight in the case of Windows Azure, or SQL reporting services with SQL Azure. So, you know, this is pay as you go, pay on a monthly basis or annual, and there's a lot of different ways they cut it by usage, different server tiers. So, you know, you get the power you need, the specs that you want for the amount of time that you need. And productivity apps. Office 365 just recently came out with a subscription-based model. So I think it's like $100 a year, and you get the latest and greatest of all the Office products. And with enterprise Office 365 customers, they also get email, and also they get SharePoint and Link, which, you know, saves in a ton of infrastructure if you were to try to implement that on premise. Now, I'm not saying that that's how companies should work, or that's how companies are smart in doing that. All I'm saying is that that Microsoft is recognizing this business model as being very lucrative, increasing their reach out to all types of customers, and allows them to change very quickly their offerings to satisfy their varying customers' needs. So with that, you would think, this model's been around a long time. There's obviously got to be somewhere where you can just you can crank out a data warehouse. You can get an example from somewhere, some book or some website. It turns out that it's not a very common thing that is modeled, and for several reasons. One of them is I think the top one, which I have out of order here, is the recurring billing piece. So monthly billing and collections is a big pain in the butt. Now, a lot of companies don't do that stuff in-house anymore. A lot of companies are outsourcing that to third parties, and interestingly enough, they're doing it on a subscription basis, on a monthly basis, with a third party collection agency. It's very, very hard because you get into different things that we'll talk about in a second. But the other reason this is challenging is, say you have a data warehouse you build and you got it all set, you've got all your business rules, you work with your business, and you've written your reports. Marketing is going to change things because they're going to get feedback from their customers. Technology might change things because of different customer needs, or because you want to expand your business offering. So it's things change really fast in this subscription economy, and so I'm going to try to elaborate a little bit on what I did when I modeled a subscription based company, so that you don't have to go through the hurdles like I did trying to figure this out. So what's hard about the subscription economy? What exactly are you talking about, Angel? Well, when I talked about the recurring billing piece, things happen, like insufficient funds. So especially with consumer-based products and services, you're going to face this, insufficient funds, and there's fees associated with that. Invalid credit cards. System loopholes is an interesting one, and it always bites subscription companies. And this is just where a member might be counted as an active member, or might be active in the system, but they haven't actually paid, or somehow, some way, this person has gotten into using the service and they shouldn't be. So, technology might get involved, and there might be an application change that needs to happen, but they do happen in this economy, and is one of the challenges that you have to face. There's also, like I already had mentioned, rapidly changing marketing campaigns based on different customer needs. Freemium subscriptions or free trials. This is also a challenge, and it's just a challenge in the fact that you have to get together with your business folks and agree to how these people are counted, if there's a special category for them, or if they're just indeed an active member like any other paid customer. Refunds. So, customer was a new customer. Once they're refunded, are they still a customer? And, that just comes into play for your company strategy, their monthly counts, and how they want to count it. Again, assembling a team, which we'll talk about in a second, is really important to get that nailed out. And just more stuff dealing with recurring billing. So, it's not an easy model, but we'll cut to the chase and try to help you guys out. So let's get ready. Let's we know it's going to be a challenge, but let's do this thing. Let's build a warehouse. So what are we going to do? Let's assemble the team and identify the key metrics. So we need some players here because we can't build this alone, and you're going to want to work with a lot of different people to try to get the definitions of things all set. And these are the ones that I think are really important, that were really important for me on my project where I was building this out. Operations, they're going to be the ones that are kind of going to be working with the workflow. They'll be able to explain to you what the process is from getting somebody registered all the way to actually purchasing the service. to renewing and the expiration process. A lot of different things that you'll have to understand, so that way when you model this data, you're modeling it correctly. Sales and marketing, we've already touched on. Business analysts, these are key people. And if that's you, then congratulations and hats off. I love business analysts. I think they're the ones that run companies because of their analytic skills and because they know how to find the answers to things that everybody really needs. So if you're not that business analyst and you know the one who's in your company, you all know who that is, then I suggest sitting next to that person for a little while to understand, what queries you need to write, what things you got to look out for, and historically maybe some of the challenges that the business has gone through when you're going through and building this out for historical data. Finance also will be involved, because if you're dealing with any type of revenue and subscription economy, finance is going to be interested in deferred revenue. So they've got to be involved. You've got to figure out their terminology so that as you build this thing, you can have them rest assured that you're building it in their best interest. And IT, of course. So your data warehouse needs to scale, or you need some more infrastructure for reporting or whatever, and keeping them in the loop. Maybe you need them to help you out with some ETL process or downloading of some files from third parties or whatever. So those are the folks that I found helped me out a lot. So identifying the key metrics. Let's go ahead and talk about this a little bit. We already talked about finance being part of the team. They're going to be interested in this key metric called recurring revenue. So say I pay for a yearly subscription, that's $199 for anything. It could be a music service or whatever. That $199 in terms of revenue does not get recognized $199 in 1 month. It has to be recognized over a period of time, over the length of the subscription. The reason being that I'm going to be using this service for 12 months, and that pays for infrastructure, it pays for internet, it pays for people's overhead with customer service. If I have to call customer service, it helps pay those folks. So this recurring revenue is what I like to call is like a fan out of the original payment for the yearly subscription over a 12-month period. When we'll talk about some T-SQL functions that are really good and cool to help you do that. There's churn, trying to figure out which members you've got, how many are coming in, and how many are leaving you. All good stuff to try to understand how your business is doing, and operations and marketing. Those people are going to be very interested in that, as well as finance. And then annual contract value is just indicating how, for every marketing dollar that's spent, how many new people am I getting onto my platform or onto my service. So all of these things are really important, and we'll tie them all together so that you guys can make sense of it and try to work on this if this is what you've got at your company. So what does the data look like, or what does the typical subscription data look like? I've compiled a relational diagram based on a couple APIs from a couple of third-party collection agencies or that deal with specifically with recurring billing. And the ones that you'll want to focus on as a subscription-based company are obviously the subscriptions, the products you sell, which could also be services, your customers, no doubt, and lastly, the transactions. So typically, there's one transactions table that's telling you all the activity of people paying these subscriptions, or not. They could be freemium subscribers or discounted subscribers. So these are going to be your key tables to really understand and try to match up with the definitions that you work with all the other folks on your team. And as a good example, just kind of breaking each of these data entities down, for customers, You might be very interested to understand, well, you will be very interested to understand these categories of customers in order to understand your churn: new, renewals, cancellations, expirations. And then subscription terms. This will be important to understand, because if you want to do your counts right for customers, you got to understand how many types of subscription terms there are, and you got to figure out a way to deal with all the different variances that you might encounter in your particular setup. Free trials, grace periods, and different levels, maybe different tiers of subscription. Payment transactions, that goes without saying, but again, just to reiterate, we've got credit card transactions, we might have checks, and your transactions table might have a lot more to it, like transactions for free trials when they start or when the person's signed up, and it may even have when they register. Maybe they just register for your service and then they back out of the whole deal. Well, who are those customers and what are they inching for? That may be something that marketing is very interested to learn, and you can do that by understanding what transaction types you have, and letting them know that, hey, I can get you a list. Services and product usage may also come into play here. If you end up, especially with a system loophole where somebody is active but they shouldn't be, are they actively using the service? How many minutes, hours, visits, downloads did this person actually do on your platform while they were an invalid member? So that might be, we didn't talk about that much in the data model, but it could be something that you need to hunt down. So let's take a look at the data, and what I'll do here is show you guys some of the tables. So, sorry, I was working with my databases a little bit before the session. So we have a company. I've taken AdventureWorks, the AdventureWorks database, and created a new company called AdventureFi. And AdventureFi rents out bikes at a subscription. You pay a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription of $199, and you're able to get bikes from anywhere in the world. This is a new startup I've come up with out of thin air, and so the relational system, if you see here, I have just a few tables. I didn't have the time to create all the tables for usage, but I have the basics here: customers, products, subscriptions, and transactions. Okay, so let's take a look just to give you guys some idea of what this data looks like. Okay, obvious customer information. You can see, we've got people from all over the world in this because we're working with AdventureWorks. Products, so these are the types of subscriptions that I have that I'm selling as a part of AdventureFi. The subscriptions table itself is just it's just all the different subscriptions identified with the customer ID, and the subscription terms are in here. And I've also in this data model, in this relational system, I've got a free trial start and end. And this is really helpful, but this doesn't always exist inside of subscription economy relational models. But this is what I've got here to play with. And then transactions are the when people pay me, pay my company. And so what I have two transaction type IDs. If it's a 1, then that means it's a payment. And then if I have 2s, which are kind of spread out throughout here, that's a cancellation. So just giving you a little preview of what those tables are, so that before we start getting into some stored procedures, you guys are a little bit familiar with what's in them. Okay. All right. So here's the key metrics kind of lined up in a formula style so that we can understand why they're important. This is courtesy of a company called Zuora. Zuora is a cloud-based company where they can handle all of the subscription economy for you. If you want to migrate to a cloud-based platform that deals with all kinds of billing, and they deal with the billing, they deal with the analytics. I personally have never had any experience with them, but they have a lot of great information regarding subscription economy and a lot of great, a lot of great stuff if you're in a subscription-based company that you may not know. I didn't know this equation or this, this idea of how a subscription economy-based business was balanced. So basically, we've got our recurring revenue. This is the monthly fan out of the subscription. So my $199 subscription divided into 12 months times however many customers I have is my recurring revenue. So if you think about it, if you have quite a few members, you can project out into the future pretty accurately, what those people are going to generate in terms of revenue. But what you don't know, or what you know only after it happens, is how many people leave you. What's your churn? So this is, obviously a subtraction from your monthly revenue, right? Because you're losing customers, you're losing that revenue. But at the same time, you're never giving up. Your marketing team is always adding to the lineup of products and services you're offering. So you're going to get some new people, but it comes at a cost. So this is how many new customers have signed up net of the investment that you put into getting those customers. But in the end, all of this lined up, you come up with the total revenue that you can rely on for your business. Now, I'm not going to touch on this one today, the contract value, the annual contract value, but I will talk about churn and I'll talk about recurring revenue. But this is the equation in total. Again, for more information, you can go to Zuora.com. So we're going to talk about churn now. And churn is, you've got to talk with your business about churn because you've got some stuff you've got to define. And let's say I went to my business and I talked, I've had a series of meetings, and I've come up with the fact that we need to monitor or be able to create counts for these 4 types of customers: active, overdue, canceled, and expired. Now, from a dimensional modeling standpoint, you have a customer's dimension, but that's not enough. You've got to count by day or by month how many people are fit into each of these categories, and you have to do it in a factual way because it's got to be a fact. It's got to be an additive number. So with our dimensional modeling folks in the audience, I can't ask you this. I'm going to ask you this question, but I'm just going to answer it myself. I wish I had a poll, but what types of facts are these? Are these additive, semi-additive, factless, or text facts? And you may say they're additive because, but the fact is they're really just factless because the fact that you have an active customer, overdue, canceled, or expired, those are just, it's always going to be, a count of 1 or a flag of 1. It's either, and it's not a 0 or a 1 because then it would be additive. I went to a Ralph Kimball dimensional modeling class and specifically asked them about this question. And the way to think about it is if your bit flag, a 0 or a 1, if the 0 has to be counted, if 0 means something, then it's not factless. So I'll show you guys the factless fact table that we're gonna build, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit. But this is something that on the BART train, I take the BART in and out of San Francisco every day, or not every day, but sometimes I work from home. But I thought I had created some revolutionary theory in dimensional modeling and was going to be able to publish it and become famous. But then I was like, I had a hunch. I said, Ralph Otto had thought about this. And so sure enough, I checked in the book, and somehow stumbled on Factless Facts, and it described this situation that I had modeled already. So I was actually happy because then I learned a ton more about Factless Facts, and that's why I'm talking about it today, so you guys aren't lost when this stuff comes up. All right, so churn. Here's some set of questions that you'll want to ask because these are important, and these are from my experience in the project I worked on. What you've got to talk with your team about. What events lead up to an active customer? So from the time they hit the website to the registration, if there's a registration, maybe there's a verification or something, some verification process, like if it's a loan or something, all the way to when they become an active member. You want to know all the different triggers, because a factless fact is the intersection of a bunch of keys, of a date, a payment, a subscription, a discount, all this stuff intersecting. Let me describe it this way. So on a certain date, on a certain discount, with a certain payment, and for a specific product, this intersection is going to be counted as a 1. And so these different events are what you're going to want to understand. What events lead up to a canceled customer? Again, a different set of intersections, but maybe it's the date of the cancellation, the customer, and the subscription. Maybe it's as simple as that, and that's what you count as a 1. And do you want to trend active membership over time? And all this, what the answer to this will lead to is whether or not you need a snapshot fact table. So a snapshot fact table keeps track of your facts snapshotted by day. So every single day, do you want to track how many active members you have? And the answer is probably likely going to be yes. So the dimensional modeling lessons I've learned here, a couple more, is don't even think about aggregating a slowly changing dimension. You may be tempted to say that a subscription, subscription is a slowly changing dimension, but don't do it, because if you're aggregating if you're trying to create a resulting fact table from another dimension or another fact table, and you're not going from the source, then it becomes very hard to audit or validate with your business analyst. And I'm telling you guys from experience. If you want to try it and prove me wrong, you guys could. I'm more than happy to hear about your experience, but this was my experience. I really needed to just know, going back to my customers, which ones were active in the source query for that, which ones were overdue in my source query for that, canceled, expired, and the source queries that are related to those classification of customers. So, yeah, and subscriptions could be modeled as a slowly changing dimension. But will people use it in the data model? So this is another thing that you might be tempted as a dimensional modeler, an ETL developer, or just an all-around BI developer. Best practice, you might think that subscriptions being a slowly changing dimension will help help you analytically. Turns out that people are much more interested after the person signed up, whether they're active or not, and that's about it. And the money they've got that they've obviously paid for your deferred revenue reports. So, excuse me. Sorry about that. Okay, so so you're going to want to also timeline scenarios, and all this means is that you're going to want to line up subscription after subscription, because if you have to count renewing members, you might have things like grace periods that tend to complicate things. So your subscription table might say that your term is from January 1st to January 1st of the following year, but for 30 days, the person still needs to be counted active because they're in grace, and the business will allow them to use the product or service for those 30 days while they're waiting for a payment to come in. So you have to timeline these things, because you're going to run into situations where, say, somebody may have canceled in the middle of their subscription and then subsequently reactivated. And what do you count as a real cancellation? Because this person reactivated, are they ever? Should you count that cancellation? These are the types of questions that we, as business analysts or dimensional modelers or ETL developers, we can't answer without the help of operations or marketing, because it's got to be a consistent definition across the business. So you definitely want to timeline everything, and just think of every type of scenario that you have in your company and be absolutely clear, so that when you build your factless facts, you know what triggers you can look for to create the intersection and ultimately get your count of 1. Okay, so here's so we'll go back into oops. We'll go back into SQL Server, and this is SQL Server 2012 for those that are wondering why it looks different. Let's see. So where we're going to start is we're going to start with the ETL. I've created a series of SSIS packages here, and 2 of the important ones are going to be, well, they're all important, but the important ones are going to be all the dimensions. These are going to be my slicers, for lack of a better term, but the slicers that intersect to get me my factless facts. So, member, product, subscription, and the one that's not listed here is date. Date is actually handled by a stored procedure in my data warehouse, which is here. So so that's the 4th dimension, but you don't actually see it here. So I've got my members, my products, and my subscriptions. Okay, so I'll run this, and I just recently updated this script. So for some of you that may have caught my session at the analytics conference, I'm going to show you something slightly different here. So in my Adventurify database, I've got my stored procedures that generate the source queries for my dimensions and facts. Okay, so for dim member, let's open this up. Let me explain a couple things here. So what I'm doing is, with a common table expression, I'm getting the last subscription that was, I'm obtaining the last subscription, last paid subscription by a member. Now, I did this kind of quick, but basically this is going to be the resulting common table expression. I'm going to do a left join to my customers table so that I can figure out whether a person has paid their last subscription or canceled their last subscription. So I generate a CTE. This could easily be a temp table. It could be a staging table that you land with your SSIS package, or a view even. But you just need something to be able to join it to your customers, or left join it, so that you can do a case statement like I did here, and tell whether this person is active or inactive. Now again, this is a very simplified case, but all I'm trying to do is illustrate here is, from a dimension standpoint, what I'm doing to indicate member status, because this logic in here, this business logic, is going to be the compilation of your discussions with your business analyst, your discussion with operations, and marketing over what triggers really identify a true active member. And you might have multiple CTEs or temp tables. You might have a registration view that needs to be joined because the person at least needs to be registered. There's a lot of different things. I can't think of them all, and every subscription-based company is different. So, but this is just the beginning for a quick and dirty membership table. Okay, so that's in key there for churn, and let's look at this membership load. So membership is loaded with this store procedure. Now let's look at this one in detail. So again, I've got another CTE with my subscriptions ordered, and the reason I have them ordered with a row number, if you're not familiar with this function, all this does is it adds a sequential number, and I partitioned it by customer ID. So what that means is if one customer ID has more than one subscription, it'll count their subscriptions. It'll add a 1, 2, 3 if they have a subscription, and then for the next customer, if they have 2, it'll start back over at 1. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I can have a case statement where I can say if it's their first subscription, then the sequential number should be 1. This row number will have a 1 per customer for their first subscription. The row number will be greater than 1 if it's a subsequent subscription, and then they're a renewed member. Now, and if this is transaction type ID, if you remember me saying, the 1s are payments and the 2s are cancellations. So this column of factless fact type is going to be key in order for my ETL to understand what to count as a new member, renewed member, and a cancellation. But there's actually one more case that I haven't talked about, and that's what I'm unioning down here. And this is the expirations. So expirations are different in the fact that the person never actually subscribes to a subsequent subscription. So what I did here was did a self join on the on the ordered subs, and if the second subscription that I'm trying to join to, basically if I had 1, 2, 3 subscriptions and I expected a 4th, but it's not there, then this ID is going to be null. So I'm filtering this list. I know Zoom it can change the color of these things, but if so this subscription is this self join is putting S2 right next to S1, and so this is what it looks like for subscription 1. There's subscription 2. For subscription 2, there's subscription 3. For subscription 3, there's a hole, and that's what gives me the expiration. Now you could have this very great transaction type called expiration. Again, every system's different, but this is just what I did in this particular case. But you're going to have to create or shape your data in order to be able to count these factless facts. And again, it's all based on intersection, and you'll need to understand the events that you need to that intersect in order for you to write these queries. All right. I wish I could see everyone to see if I've got anybody sleeping or anything, but I really, really appreciate you guys spending your morning with me. I really do. I really love this stuff, and I hope this helps you guys out. So the last key metric I'll be talking about is the recurring revenue. So the goal here is we want to spread out a payment transaction of, like, say, $199 into equal intervals, whatever the interval is. If it's a month, and it's a 12-month subscription, we want to be able to do that. If it's a 9-month subscription, we want to be able to do that. We understand there might be a rounding error, But how the heck do we do this, Angel? So there's a T-SQL function that can help us do this. But what T-SQL function can do this the best? Now, I had my friend Brad Schultz, SQL Server MVP for DesignMind, help me to verify this, and he wrote up some nice scripts that I'll share with you in a second. But here's just a couple options that may or may not work. And I'm trying to trick you guys because really almost all of them work. So we'll go through cross joins and cross applies. Cross apply is one of my favorites. I think it makes a lot of sense for this particular case where we're trying to fan out a payment into equal intervals. Now, for recurring revenue, you're going to want to ask some questions again, with the team, nailing these things out. What if payment transactions occur before, during, or after the subscription period? So, payment transactions are usually, that's when the rubber meets the road. I mean, that's when a person really should become active. But it may not. In your particular company, there may be exceptions. And when that occurs, whether it's before, during, or after the subscription period, you got to understand when you count that member as a new member. Do we want to add discount amounts? So sometimes discounts, are just like 2 months free. Some percentage off, and sometimes they don't actually get a transaction tied to them. So do we want discount amounts to be added into our analysis for recurring revenue? So how much if they're asking questions like, well, we want to be able to analyze how much in discounts we're giving out every month, then the obvious answer is yes, we do need to add discount amounts. How should refunds be treated? So, obviously with the refund, the revenue that you were going to recognize is now going away, but how is it going away? So you take a $199 subscription that a person's used for 4 months, and then you need to give them a refund because they were mad, they didn't want they didn't want to deal with the service anymore, so they quit. So but they legitimately use the service for 4 months. So maybe you don't prorate them the whole $199 subscription. Or I recently had an Amazon virtual machine that I wanted to delete because I had forgot to turn it off, and I had racked up a ton of usage charges. So I told them, hey, I haven't even used this server. It was like, I don't know, $300 or something. And what they came back with was like, yeah, we'll take that off your bill as long as you delete the whole virtual machine. And in my case, it didn't matter. I said, sure, all right, deleted it, and they credited me $300, and I wiped my brow, and I said, phew, that was a close one. So how refunds are treated, again, you want to understand all that. Dimensional modeling lessons learned. So you want to use the transaction date of the payment or the free trial, but ignore the effective date. So, and I say be consistent because it's better to just globally. Sometimes with payment systems, sometimes people will say that a payment is retroactive to the start of the subscription. But in terms of revenue, we've already gone past those months past and have done our reporting for deferred revenue. So we have to work with the transaction date when the person actually paid, and so there's this catch up that we have to take into account, when it comes to the revenue recognized in a particular month. So if person pays in month 3 of 12, then depending on how finance wants to do it, we've got 3 months worth of revenue that we have to recognize in month 4. Handle transactions that occur before, during, and after subscription terms with separate source queries. So you want to keep your queries organized in a way that that can be handed off. And what helps is if you can filter for these scenarios where you have payments that occur after but are retroactive to the beginning of time, or people that paid on time, or people that pay late, and that could be just a landing table, that you clean out all of the payment type of scenarios and come up with a consistent table that you can then do a left join so that you can classify and generate your factless fact. And use the cross-apply function to generate recurring revenue data. I like the function a lot, and I think it has a lot of, it could be used for other things too as well. I have this recurring revenue. Well, I didn't want to show you that. Actually, I have a script, and I can share this with you if you want to ping me after the session with my contact info. Whoops. That I'll be more than happy to give you. And a lot of people ask me for this script because a lot of this code, Brad Schultz is a SQL Server MVP with DesignMind. He has a blog and he talks a lot about cross-apply in his, I got to give credit to Brad Schultz here. Here, I'll go ahead and do that now. And I'll clean this up after the session. So if anybody wants this script afterwards, I'll be more than happy to give it to you. So let's look at the different ways that we can do this with T-SQL. Okay. So annual subscriptions, we're going to go ahead and create a table and insert some data, and this is what it looks like. Okay. So the goal here is to fan out by customer. And let's say that the subscription started on 4/1, 3/1, 3/1, and these amounts, okay, we want to be able to fan those out. And so I've got a couple of different things here, and I'm going to turn on my my execution plan so you can see what types of things the query optimizer does when it does a cross join. Okay, so now with this cross join and this slick way of doing the values, using the values predicate, we can go ahead and create, multiple rows for every single month. Now, there is an issue with this that it may not be apparent to you because if we take into account there's the sense, we're going to come up with a rounding error. And we'll talk about how to deal with that here in some later scripts. But execution plan-wise, here's what it looks like. Okay, you have table scan, compute scalar, nested loops, compute scalar. Okay, let's go ahead and run the cross using. Let me zoom in here so you guys can see this a little bit better. So what's neat about the cross apply is you can cross apply another query, another set, and do things with it on a row by row basis from the table that you're doing that's on the left side of the cross apply function. So it's perfect, and it makes perfect sense because I've got my revenue months. And I want to divvy those up. So, if I run this, and the nice thing is if I run this, it's the same execution plan. And I guess to clarify, it's only nice in the fact that I could use either or if my subscriptions were always 12 months. But more than likely, you might not have that situation. So we'll talk about that. But here's the rounding error issue. So with this query, what this does is it inserts the cents that are off, that you need in order to make this whole, and it kind of spreads it out. This might not be how you do it today. I've seen other companies take the rounding error at the end or at the beginning. It just sort of depends, and that's again one of the calls that you have to make with finance and talk with them about. Subscription. So let's say you have subscriptions of varying lengths. We're going to create a new subscriptions table, insert some data, and now you can, and I'll show you what that looks like. Oh, sorry, I misspelled. Okay, so I've got similar type table, but this time I have a varying number of months. Okay, so what we do here, or this is one design pattern, is we created a table just of random numbers, or not random numbers, they're sequential numbers. So if I do, so it's just a million rows, and it's just a sequential number. Give it an, let me stop it, add a primary key, and now with that numbers table, doesn't matter if I have a subscription for 12 months or I have a subscription for 24. It does this one query fans it out, and it takes care of the rounding error. So so that's the cross apply function, and what I was showing before with my source query for the fact table for the recurring revenue, which is a additive fact table, I use the cross apply function here. And I also use the similar type functions to take care of the rounding error for me. But I did not use a numbers table because I do not have subscriptions of varying length. So this is just one way to do it, and I'm sure you guys out there probably have already developed methods to do this, and I'd be very interested to learn how you guys applied this at your companies. So strategies for using this subscription data, we've already covered. We want to try to reduce churn and increase attrition. I actually messed that up. So we want to try to increase the hold onto our customers. We can do that by looking at what marketing campaigns are effective, or discounts, or looking at the time periods and seeing if we did some direct mailing. We can increase our cash. We can see what we can do maybe from a finance perspective to offset our expenses for our infrastructure if we need to scale up. Freemium subscriptions, very popular way to get people to use your service and look at the good that it's doing. And long-term agreements, maybe you got a 1 year to 3 year type of subscription, and you want to look at the effectiveness of each one. And I apologize, I didn't update this slide, but I did have a visualization portion of this session, but I'm not going to be able to cover that. I don't have enough time. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I'm on Twitter, and I have a blog. My email is up there, as well as my blog and my Twitter handle. Mark Inabaugh, who's also very active in the SQL Server community, is there as well. He is the owner of DesignMind, and he'd be more than happy to talk to you or arrange something. And subscription economy, I'm a big fan. It's so important today, and it gets me to products and services, as I'm sure it does to you, for the right price point with the right amount of usage for me and my personal situation. It's very personal, and they change, and they're constantly improving. And my hope here is just to help some of you that have maybe looked out there for some examples of how to dimensional model this type of revenue, or to get some answers on churn. And I thought I'd share some of the lessons that I've learned. And I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me this morning. And thanks to Pragmatic Works and their team for having me on here.